Good evening and welcome to The Turning Point. I'm your host, Reverend Wendell Anthony, brought to you each week by the Freedom Institute for Economic, Social Justice, and People Empowerment. It is the most wonderful time of the year. It is a time of the year when families come together, when people are forgiving and loving, and fellowship is high, and spirits are high, and people make all kinds of commitments as one year is about to close and another year is about to begin. Obviously, the year 2020 is a year that all of us will never forget, and many of us don't want to remember. It is a year of the great pandemic of 2020, the coronavirus, COVID-19. Many people who were here last year at this time are not here this year. Families are celebrating and they're trying to do it as best they can within the limitations that are available from state to state. We now are a country that has the highest number of deaths by COVID-19 of any nation on the planet. We have more people dying every day than any nation on the planet. We have more people that have died in one day than died in the whole of the 2011 situation in terms of the people that were killed relative to the attack in Washington and also in New York. And so we are finding ourselves really, do we celebrate? Do we not celebrate? Do we bring families together? Do we not? And so as we look at Christmas, which is the holy day of the year for Christians and people who believe according to the teachings of Jesus the Christ. And then from there we move to Kwanzaa, the celebration of the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, and what that means for African Americans and other people who pause to celebrate these great principles of living. I often say that Christmas is the actuality of Jesus the Christ, and Kwanzaa is the express representation of what Jesus Christ was really about. When you look at those principles, measure those against what he stood for, what he lived for, what he died for, and what he rose for. Even though Kwanzaa is not a spiritual and religious holiday, there is spirit within it. And so we're going to talk to 2 ladies who are very much involved in the spirit of the season. One is the First Lady of Fellowship Chapel, Monica Anthony, who was also the director of the James E. Wadsworth Community Center, and another is the assistant minister here, Reverend Dr. Myra Lisa Reynolds, who is also an educator and principal of one of the cities in the states, the nation's premier schools, the School of Performing Arts. We're going to talk to them about Christmas and about Kwanzaa and what we should do. Welcome, ladies. Good to have you. Christmas, you know, songs are written about it. People come together to deal with it, but somehow, and I read something from someone the other day who said, I don't really want to celebrate Christmas because it just does not seem like we have anything to celebrate. And it's a downer. Keep in mind, too, that a lot of us are reminded what we do have, but a lot of people are also reminded what they don't have, particularly when it comes to Christmas. So, Ms. Anthony, should we be engaged in that process? What's your take on that?
It's my favorite time of the year, but I am very aware of the downside for many people. Under the Wadsworth Center, a few years ago, we had coffee with a counselor and a series of sessions, and one of the sessions we had was seasonal affective disorder, which the acronym is SAD. And as we go into the change of seasons, which just happens to be around Thanksgiving and Christmas, people do find themselves emotionally and mentally being impacted in not the best ways. And so some of us who are extremely happy and joyous and, singing the carols, impact others because they don't feel that way. They are impacted and they don't have that joyousness for legitimate reasons, mental and emotional reasons.
So, I mean, I'm a family, my uncle, my brother, my sister, been victims of COVID. We can't come together like we normally would, and I can't shop like I normally would. And Christmas has been so commercialized. So what do I have to be happy and joyous about?
Again, I can only speak for myself. I have many things to be joyous about, but I'm a joyous person anyway. I don't have tendencies to be depressed or down, and that does not mean that people that are not good or, or there's I don't like the negative connotation that our culture and society puts on mental illness and mental health. And so I look at my blessings, and yes, we did have lots of trauma this year in 2020, but if you walk by faith and not by sight, and if you are a lover of Christ, then you know that you don't let the situations get to you. It's how you deal with the situations, and so just stay happy. I like this time of the year anyway. I'm joyous. I like to decorate. I like I don't fight with the commercialism of Christmas because I know Jesus is the reason for the season.
Right, there you go.
But I do buy gifts, and I do candy canes and all, which is really a J turned upside down, if you guys remember that some years ago. But I just say to people, do you. That's my motto anyway, do you. And so if it's not the best time of the year, and respect people's space. So if I'm not going to be like Elf. I just watched that with our 9-year-old, and who's just the jolliest Christmassy person. And if I know that impacts you, then I might pull back a little bit, but you got to respect my space. So I think it's a give and take thing.
So you mentioned the Wadsworth Center. What is the Wadsworth Center for Fellowship Chapel? What is that about?
It is named after our founding pastor, Reverend James E. Wadsworth Jr., and started by you right after his passing in 1986. So we've been around almost 40 years now. And through that, it's the community outreach arm of Fellowship Chapel, has its own 501c3. And the community outreach has varied over the years, but we still do something for every aspect of the community, from youth to seniors. Health, education, life enhancement is what we focus on. We have adoption and foster care. We bless young men just this week with toiletries and things that we all take for granted: socks, underwear, toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant. A lot of people don't have those little things. We do the Intone Johnny and Sutu training institutes for boys and girls ages 6 to 18. We do sewing, we do music, we do just a number of things.
This is the age of COVID. What have y'all been doing with regards to that?
We stayed outside as long as we could in Michigan, and we just kind of went virtual. Some of the programs did cease, as a lot of people know, with their organizations. However, many are ongoing. Intone Johnny and the Sutu are ongoing. They meet the first and second Saturday from 2 to 4. They're doing that virtually, and even if you haven't joined, you can still join and be a part of the virtual sessions as well.
You mentioned health. What are you doing in the area of health, particularly in this COVID area and arena and era, and people
Now
have so many
that one
needs?
is a tough one, but we do have, through one of our instructors, Kimberly Boyd Johnson, who does spiritual yoga. She does some virtual sessions, but because we can't be in the facility here, those that we did have through Zumba and aerobics and stuff, those had to cease.
What do you do in terms of PPEs? I mean,
yeah,
those kind of
health.
things.
I thought
This
you
is
meant like
very,
health.
very, very important.
Yes, so we
Right.
have
Y'all
been
do
a
anything with that?
facility and site that has distributed everything from actual funds to food, personal protection for individuals and businesses through various sponsors, DTE, Wayne County Community College District. We've been a testing site. We've been here throughout the pandemic, even through our recent Thanksgiving basket giveaway, which is as old as the organization itself. It started through the church, but we do it through the Wadsworth Center now. So in addition to giving away the food, we gave away the light bulb and DTE energy efficiency packages to the families, 2 per family, which should light up your whole house. And so, again, we try to enhance the quality of life for everyone, from youth to seniors.
Dr. Reynolds, you obviously are in the ministry, and this time of year, as we talked about, is a real key time. And being also an educator, dealing with students, some of whom have and some of whom have not. And there are various things and traumas that go on in schools in the lives of young people. What are you seeing now? And I think there was recently a situation at your school involving a student or some that challenged the students. How are you dealing with this in this time of the year? I mean, this is different than April. This is different than June, or it's different in February. This is Christmas. This is Kwanzaa. How are you dealing with that? What's your approach, and what do you see?
Well, the students, the teachers, and the administrators, everyone is under a tremendous amount of stress, because everyone has it in their mind that they're going to make things like they were before, but they can't, right? So really it's a process of grieving, particularly the seniors, because they've been told their whole life that you go through school, you work hard, and that senior year is just going to be a breeze, it's going to be fun, you're going to have activities, and they feel that they've been robbed. So there's been a lot of lashing out, a lot of circle time and meetings to listen to their grievances. And what I tried to tell the teachers is just to have compassion.
Are they angry?
They're angry. They're very upset.
Who are they angry at?
They're taking it out on anybody, teachers, administrators, a counselor. But after I shifted and said, we're going to listen to them. We're not going to debate them. We're just going to listen to their grievances. And then we gave them several surveys. Well, what do you want to do? Then they wouldn't participate in the surveys. So what I started doing is doing what I do best, and that is to cultivate joy. So I take the few kids, a few teachers that want to create a program. We did a gospel concert last week. We asked you and others to give positive messages. We had alumni who were performing artists professionally who sang gospel songs and inspirational songs. The kids, some of the students participated. We had a teacher put it all together, and we put it on our YouTube channel, right? So I'm being very intentional about creating spaces of joy. We had a day called a wellness day where I said no classes, just show up. I have a channel that I talk to the children every morning. I tell them, I'm proud of them, I love them, they're good enough, they're working hard. I give them acknowledgments when they do something great. So we took a day and I called on all my friends. I had Mama Patrice, a therapist, come. I had Dr. Kari Turner. They thought Kari Turner was a therapist. And he did some poetry and he talked to the kids, and it was such a breath of fresh air. They need mental wellness intentionally. So I've just been shifting our focus. Yes, we're going to read, write, do math and science, but we need to focus also on their mental wellness. And so the district is doing the same thing. Partner with University of Michigan. They're doing surveys. So really to understand that we're all in a traumatic situation because we're trying to force something to be what it's not, right? This is truly a gap year. And if you know anything about education, you know that you can actually take a gap year and still be okay. Right? So relieving yourself from the pressure of testing, standardized testing needs to be taken off the table, is whack, and is not a true measure of our children anyway. Yeah. But if we relax more and just help the kids process this time we will eventually get back to what we call normal.
When you say it's a gap year, for people who don't really understand what that means, what do you mean by that, it's a gap year?
It's what the rich people do, right? They'll, was it Sasha? Yeah.
Sasha.
So when you graduate high school and instead of going straight to college because you've gotten accepted, you have the test scores, you take a year off and then you go. Well, we're taking a gap year, whether you're a kindergartner or a third grader, like it's a year where it's not the same. And teachers are grieving because they're trying to teach these lessons. They're teaching their hearts out virtually. But virtual teaching is only going to get a strand of the learning because black children in particular are multidimensional, which is why I love Kwanzaa. They're multidimensional. They learn kinesthetically, visually, spatially. Little boys, they learn by flipping and jumping. Kindergarten is learning through play. And if we don't hold the intentionality around allowing them to play, allowing them to have joy, allowing them to relax, we're going to stress them out. And I know we're stressing them out because I have several children that have been institutionalized because they've had mental breakdowns, because they feel pressure to excel, and it's just too much.
When you say allow them to do certain things and allow them almost to be free and to, is there a danger with that? Is there a danger relative to too much freedom? And you talk about a gap year. Does that mean that they're losing a year? Will they be behind now? Will we be behind the curve? When you look at all the other school districts, when you look at other countries, is America now going to be behind educationally?
Any more than it was?
I was going to say, one, we're already behind. Two, the system needs to be dismantled and restructured, and this is a perfect time to do it. Children are resilient. The whole Montessori method for education, developed by Marie Montessori, she took orphans who were in the streets, and she said, how do they learn, right? And they learn by doing, and so they were surviving. Our kids in Detroit are survivors. They're resilient, but we don't test resilience. We test angles. Right? But if we talk to them about how they're resilient and we measured that and gave them credit for it, they're on par with it. They can handle anything in the world. They're creators and innovators of everything that everyone wants to replicate around the world, but they don't even know it about themselves.
So how can you take this moment now with the COVID and all that, and with Christmas being the way it is, and implement that and get something out of it even more significant for your child and for the children?
Go.
Yeah.
I thought you were directed
I'm coming to both of you.
It's interesting. Today, there was a internet issue at the home. Our daughter is homeschool, which is different from virtual learning. She could be at school right now. She doesn't have to be on there at the time that the school district and school says so. So it's a lot different. And you are a homeschool parent as well. And I always think about all the factors that aren't being looked into. So the parent who has the internet connection issue, that's not tech savvy, that couldn't do what I was doing, which was on the phone with Comcast, telling her to go read because she couldn't get on with the school. I think about all those things that are going to the wayside and that aren't being addressed that are going to come out. I'm with you totally. I don't think a year is going to just turn our system and our country upside down, I kind of lost what you said because I thought you were asking her the question.
In terms of the Christmas piece, because that's a part of it. We're in the Christmas season, we're in the Kwanzaa season. How are you now using this moment, understanding the gap that we're in, but as learning experiences, as teaching experiences, how can we use Christmas now for an even bigger message, for a greater message?
Going back to what you first said, that we were, going back to the traditional Christmas, let's go out, let's shop, let's buy. You know, we haven't been able to do everything in the traditional sense. We lost major people when, you know, you think your story and, oh, I lost this person. And then I hear somebody say, this is the 9th person I've lost personally. And you go, wow, I thought I had it bad. And you've seen the memes and the things out there, like, it's not about what you didn't have this year, but what you do have. So I think that to me is really the message this year that we need to invoke and tell the children. We both come up here year after year. I know your family takes a night, as our church traditionally would host our overnight guests, the homeless people, for a week, the Good Samaritan ministry. I like to use that as a tool to show our daughter there are people that are hungry, there are people that are homeless. So now you got to find ways to implement that, because that's not there. And I think we just have to really emphasize what we do have and the blessings that we do have, in spite of everything, in spite of not traveling, in spite of not seeing grandma or your grandkids. This is, and you hit the nail on the head. This is deeper than 4+4. This is deeper than a run-on sentence. It's impacting us in a mental way. And when I say us, I think all of us, not just the children that we don't even know about yet.
And so when you talk about that, and you can comment on it, but in terms of Kwanzaa, a lot of folk are suggesting that, you know, Kwanzaa is, are you trying to replace Christmas? Is it a substitute for Christmas? That's a black thing. I mean, it's so for people who don't support or observe Christmas, they go to Kwanzaa. I mean, is Kwanzaa a replacement of that? And can you take what she just indicated as a basis for learning and extending what one would get out of Christmas?
So I don't know where to begin.
I mean, I know I took several things.
Well, no, I'm real clear how I want to do that, because, to be clear, most black people from the 60s that celebrated Kwanzaa didn't participate in the commercialism of Christmas. Right. Mm-hmm. They thought the Santa Claus and all that, that's whack, because that's not real, because that don't have nothing to do with Jesus either, right? So we can take this year, where we really bring it back home to Christ, where we talk about the Advent, where we tell the story of Elizabeth and Mary and Joseph and Zechariah, and we really talk about the Christmas story, because we have gotten so far away from the origin of Christmas even in this American capitalistic context. We think it's about going broke. We think it's about, you know, all these other things that stress us out that don't have nothing to do with Jesus. Right? But at Fellowship, we have service on Christmas morning, have had it for years, right? So that's one thing, that those who joined Dr. Maulana Karenga in the late 60s with Kwanzaa, they were ridding themselves of the Eurocentric concept of Christmas. So they were Christians and Muslims. They were African traditionalists. Some of them were not religious at all. And Kwanzaa said, come home to Africa. Kwanzaa said, it doesn't matter your belief system, this is a moral value system.
Let me ask you
I
this.
love how people say Kwanzaa was made up.
Right. Is Kwanzaa a spiritual holiday? What is it? Is it a religious holiday? Is it a spiritual? What is the nature of it? And
It was made up.
Like
everything else. It's called creation.
Right.
So, yes, Kwanzaa is a cultural revolution. And Kwanzaa is like jazz. Jazz is a cultural revolution, an American cultural creation by Africans in America, taking the polyrhythms of Africa and the Eurocentric instruments. Mm-hmm. The blues was made up in America. Rhythm and blues, hip hop, R&B, rap, all of these things are made up from coming out of our experience, the spirituals. So what Dr. Karenga did as a cultural researcher, he took the information from studying East Africa, Kenya, Egypt. He wrote the Day of the, not the Day of the Dead, but from the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Hosea. And so he took these mores and values and said, if Africans in America knew their cultural context, it could center them in the truth of who they are, and then they would not tolerate the abuse. Carter G. Woodson said the same thing when he wrote The Miseducation of the Negro and created Negro History Day, then Negro History Week during the birth of Frederick Douglass. That's why it's in February, not because it's the shortest month. But he said if black people knew who they were, it would fuel them. So it becomes spiritual, because when a child gets to see themselves reflected in the past in a positive way, it inspires them.
Is Kwanzaa another way of saying Black Lives Matter?
Kwanzaa is definitely saying Black Lives Matter.
Exactly.
Black Lives Matter.
Right. And how do you celebrate it? What are the ways in which we know how we celebrate Christmas? We go to church, some of us. We give gifts. We have a big dinner. We visit relatives. We celebrate the birth of Jesus the Christ. Kwanzaa, what are you doing?
Well, after the celebration of Christ on the 25th, Kwanzaa begins on the 26th through the 1st. It is about focusing, it's like a meditation. You focus on a word: unity, self-determination, collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, creativity, purpose, and faith. Every day of the principle, you light a candle and you discuss it. Kwanzaa, this is the best year, because when I used to go out into the community, Mommy Mani would say, you know, Maiwa, Kwanzaa was made for the family. You got to always celebrate at home. Kwanzaa is about strengthening families, because we know if we have strong black families, we have a strong community. And to your point about Christmas and some people being traumatized, it's really because our families are so fragile. That's how come if we say a gap year isn't good, because some kids are being traumatized. But if our families were whole, this would be the greatest thing to ever happen to us. To go back home and learn from your mother and your father. To go back home and listen to the stories of your ancestors. How did we get to Detroit? Well, my Uncle Bo got a job at Chrysler. Then he had my mother come up and live with him to help him with all them kids. Then she married one of his best friends. And then another aunt came up. These are real stories of Detroiters. Kwanzaa is a time for the eldest person in the family to tell that story. To tell the children how we used to live in Alabama or Mississippi or St. Louis and we moved to Detroit. To tell them the struggles and the triumphs. And that will give them energy to know when they're faced with a challenge, Grandma, you know, used to walk to work, right? If I catch a D-Dot with a free bus card, I'm okay, because Grandma used to walk. So Kwanzaa is about bringing us back home, about the family, about love, about unity, because we have seen now, at the end of the day, that's all we have.
As a result of, and you mentioned Maulana Karenga, who birthed it, who brought it to life, and 60s, 70s, 80s, I was in the Pan-African Congress back then. We celebrated and pushed African centrism and Kwanzaa and all of that. It was an era. You had the era of the Shrine of the Black Madonna. You had black nationalist movements. You had so much blackness. You had African-centered education in Detroit. Detroit was like the Mecca, to use that terminology, for African-centered education. That was an era. Now we're in a different era. We're in the era of, for lack of a better term, that they may not really understand, Black Lives Matter. We're in the era, we're coming through this Trumpism era. We're coming through all that we've gone through. When you look at Kwanzaa, Christmas, we've been celebrating it for 2,020 years. And we know what it's in our blood. It's what we do. Do you see any issue with Kwanzaa being as relevant today in 2020? Because you got a lot of, you got the millennials who really, in many cases, are not into the black nationalist kind of thinking and the Kwanzaa orientation. They're into entrepreneurship. They're into business. They're into all the other things. You don't see the kind of nationalist thrust that we saw back in that day. So is it still relevant today? Do you see it growing, or do you see it remaining the same, or is it dissipating?
I think it's transforming. I think the younger people are very critical, so they're critical thinkers, which is great, because if they read Dr. Maulana's books, then they have something to grab a hold of. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll say, well, he was problematic, so I'm not going to have anything to do with that, right? And that's silly, because the principles are universal. Unity. He didn't make up unity, right? He didn't make up self-determination. But to combine them and to know that the Nguzo Saba is something that you can pattern your life after. Like, we participate in Small Business Saturday, but as people who practice the Nguzo Saba, we seek out small businesses all the time. That's a normal way of functioning, right? That, we know. I grew up in Detroit. I grew up with a black pediatrician, a black lawyer, so you grew up with this sense of whatever you needed, you knew there was someone in your community that could provide it. That's the Nguzo Saba. Mm-hmm. So I see it as transforming. I still get invited to speak. I work with the young people, the Detroit group of Black Lives Matter. They invite me into their safe spaces because they're interested in creating safe spaces for black people, right? They'll say they're spiritual because they got issues with organized religion. Well, if organized religion marginalizes people for being gay, then they have a problem with that, right? But if they find a spiritual space that embraces everyone, because that's really what a lot of black people's problem is with Black Lives Matter. It's not defunding the police, is that they are universal in their acceptance of all black people because they know we come in many shapes, sizes, and ways, right? So they feel that, a lot of the young people feel that institutions like the church has systematically left them out. But they have to seek those spaces that are safe, that have always been safe, that will love you regardless, right? So I'm blended the church with Nguzo Saba. I think it's relevant. I think that it will transform. I think that it's still significant. Mami Imani and them, who we got it from, they were there with Maulana Karenga. Right. I've listened to him lecture.
You mean Imani Humphrey?
Mami Imani Humphrey, the founder of Aisha Shule. Right. And she cultivated this whole group of young people who sat at her feet. And then we had children and taught our children. But the way our children process it is different from the way we process it. And we have to be okay with that. Because at the end of the day, no matter what they do when they go out there, they'll still come back to these morals and values. Because the Makeka, the mat, that's Mother Africa. I love seeing new woke people, right? I don't get into arguments with
You said with new woke people?
New woke people, right? They just found out about Africa and they want to just tell me all about it. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Right.
Or I don't celebrate Thanksgiving because of the Native American. Like, I did that 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
And after 10 years, my mama was like, you better get your behind over here and eat this food. And I had to recognize that while we didn't celebrate the murder of indigenous people, black family unity is how we survived.
And you made a point, and that's a good segue, which is what I said earlier. I understand the difference between the commercialism of Christmas and the Christ in Christmas. You made a point about the young people are critical and they're critical thinkers, and I was like, are they? I had a conversation earlier this week because I don't think that they are as much as they should be. I think that because they're the Snapchat generation, they haven't read, they haven't studied, they take sound bites, they listen, and they regurgitate the things that they hear without analysis, without researching, and it gets them in trouble, as we've seen. I don't want to say folks' names, but as we've seen with some that rise, they've got so many followers and they got the blue check on Twitter and Instagram, and then they always get caught up because they haven't done the homework. And I use the Black Lives Matter analogy a lot with the fact that, are you changing policy and going back? And I know we kind of going in a different direction, but I just, when you said that, I'm like, they got a little more work to do. Yes, Pan-African. I remember as an African Studies major student at Wayne State getting the Maulana, Dr. Karinga's book, and that was part of one of our lessons. And so, no, I was not there with Mama Imani and the Shule and those folks, but I'm a product like you are, because they demanded that these classes and these curriculums be added to the course. But I think that we've trained them up in the way they should go, and I don't think that they're gonna depart from it. That's the hope that I have. But I think that we have allowed them, we made it easy for them. And each generation does it. My husband, Reverend Anthony, talks about when I was coming up, you know, I was in a number 3 tub, and we talk about those experiences because we understand how they made us. They made us that grit. They made us who we are. But then we turned around and said, oh, I don't want my kids to go through that. Right. But it made you who you are. You know what I'm saying? And so the young people just got a little more to do. We've made it really easy for them. And so we have to hold them accountable.
Yeah, I think it might not be bad for some of them to have to go through that.
Oh, yeah.
Quite frankly, it's unfortunate that they have not had to struggle. And that's on the one hand, you don't want them to struggle, but on the other hand, they need to struggle. They need to.
Maybe this is a good moment for that.
Oh yeah, this is gonna make or break you. This is really finding out what you're made of, honestly. And it's like a marriage or anything else. It's easy to be good when things are going good. But what happens when it's a challenge, when it's a struggle? That's when you find out what a person is made of. And this is revealing what we're made of. And one thing we talk about is self-care. Self-care is not selfish. It's a revolutionary act, according to Audre Lorde. It's not self-indulgence, because if I am sick or crumble, how can I help my community? So it's putting things in perspective. But the Nguzo Saba is solid.
Yes, it is.
Right? Separate from Dr. Karenga, but you still want to give him credit. But his problematic behavior doesn't take away the power of the Nguzo Saba.
What if I want to celebrate Kwanzaa? What do I need?
You're gonna need a little kit. So you need a mat, a straw mat. That's the foundation, Mother Africa. You need a kinara, which holds the 7 candles. The 7 candles are the mores and the values that I said. And it's in Kiswahili. Kiswahili was an African language, really it's a hybrid of an Arab and African language spoken in Kenya. In the continent of Africa, after it's been colonized, there's only one country that has an African language as its official language. That's Kenya. All the other nations have English as Nigeria's official language. That's a European country that colonized it. French is Benin's official language. That's a European country that colonized it. So he chose Kiswahili not because it was better than the other African languages, but at the time, it's the only African language, which still is a hybrid language, because Africans traded with Arabia. They traveled all over the world. Asia, they'd been to the Americas, Dr. Van Sturtevant. So really, the Nguzo Saba should be the introduction to black culture to take you deeper. But you need for your home, you need the 7 candles, 3 red, 3 green, 1 black for unity or faith. Mama Imani likes the black candle last for faith, but a lot of people like the black candle first for unity and then alternate. Gifts are given on the last day of Kwanzaa, the day of Imani, faith, but gifts that are culture. I brought some books. You give away books, a bracelet for unity, something that you make, right? And I think that those kinds of lessons for our children, taking them back to that instead of a $150 iPod or whatever we're doing, right? PlayStation 5, people going broke in the underground world market instead of making bracelets and talking about unity. And this is going back to when we didn't have anything, but our great-grandparents and foremothers and fathers created joy out of nothing. I know we are peculiar people. I know people wonder, how did they do it? We beat them, we took their language, we took their religion, their culture, and they still in there laughing and loving on each other and creating family. And that's what the Nguzo Saba shows us, that no matter where we find ourselves in the diaspora, in the world, we can still create the life we want for ourselves. And even in this pandemic, we have the right and the authority to do that. Even when we look and see that the person that was in the highest seat of power, according to this current construct, was rabidly racist. And is really now trying to say, every black vote, if you take that off the table, I'll win. So let me cancel all the black votes. That is the most absurd, but we're in the year 2020 and still having this conversation. So the kids need Nguzo Saba,
Yes.
first fruits, because Kwanzaa means a celebration of the harvest, the first fruits. And as we leave, we go to Christmas and the birth of Christ, head toward the beginning of the new year. It's time to take inventory. What have we done for our people? Who are we? And what are we going to do next?
What do I need to celebrate Christmas?
Just a heart. What you preached about it last week, love. The greatest of these is love. Everything else is just sounding brass. Hope, faith, and love. It's so simple. It's not about the tree. It's not about the gifts underneath it. His gift, he loved us yet while we were unworthy. I was just, when I got that scripture in Romans, I mean, like, what do you do for people? You make sure they're worthy. You don't do nothing until somebody's worthy. Right. Let me see, I can't hire you. Let me see, are you worthy? You wasn't worthy. He said, I'm going to do it. So you just have to have love. Faith, hope, and love. It's real simple.
For the Wadsworth Center, how do people connect with the Wadsworth Center? Do you have a web page or
yeah.
number? If I want to support the Wadsworth Center, if I want to give to it, if I want to help or volunteer, what do I do?
We are on a website, we have a phone, we have a website, we got email, we have social media, jewjcc.org. Should I look into a camera or should I look at you? jewjcc.org, 313-347-2830. We're on social media, we're on Facebook, Instagram, many programs. Our website details those programs. We want to, I'm going to take this opportunity to thank all the sponsors, all the people who step up. There are so many. We fed over 500 people just a month ago, and we did that through the contributions of the members of Fellowship Chapel, TCF Bank, Goodman Acker Law Firm, Chemical Maze, Rod Rickman, Ron Moten and the Black McDonald's, and so these people throughout the year, Wayne County Community College District is our major partner, and they are doing wonderful things in the community. And so support the people that support you, and that's what these people do by helping us with funding and in-kind support and donations. DTE is another supporter, so we're just grateful to all of our sponsors and to all of our volunteers. The parents, the moms, the babas, the mamas that are getting up and handling the Zoom conferences with the young people, and they're keeping them engaged. Even though they are Zoomed and videoed out, they like what they like. Won't you say that, Madam Educator? So I said, oh my God, to Wendalea, just today, I said, we forgot to go to the thing with Miss Penny Irvin, and she said, no, we didn't. I said, you did it? I said, you cease to amaze me. So she remembered, and she got on this call for choir because they like it. If they like it, then so you got to keep them engaged. Keep the young people engaged in this age of newness and different. And we're here, and like I said, helping young people to seniors, so reach out to us.
So you mentioned 500 people, you meant 500 families.
I mean, way more than that.
Right,
I mean, we had to go out and buy more food. We kept getting support and sponsorships that kept coming in. And so we ran to the store and got more and did more. And it was really great, and did it during COVID. It was different for us, but it was one of the best years. I mean, we laughed all day and just really had a good time in the cold, but that's just what we do.
So Reverend Reynolds, I know that you speak about Kwanzaa, you go to groups, and are you still doing that? terms of folk who want to know about Kwanzaa and the ability to structure a Kwanzaa celebration. Do you still do that?
It's interesting. I'm going to do it. I'm going to pre-record it from my school because when I started, I did my student teaching at DSA in 1999, and that was my first Kwanzaa program. And we did it. I taught 3 African dances. I got the kids all together. I taught them all about Kwanzaa. They were like, "Who is this lady?" And we've done it every year. In the 3 years I taught at Cass, that was their first time doing Kwanzaa, so I did it there. So I'm going to pre-record it for our holiday Kwanzaa concert. I've been asked by West Bloomfield High School, by the African American Student Association, to do it for them, and it'll be virtual. So it'll be through Zoom. I'm going to do the Kwanzaa, take them through the principles. I'm going to do a head wrapping session and talk with them. But back when I was a teacher, I would take my students to West Bloomfield, and they would do the dancing and the lighting of the candles. So it was a way for us to have an exchange and to build community across the state. And so I'll be doing it, but, I like live, but I'm going to, protect myself and my family, and I am going to do it. So they'll be available to be on our YouTube channel, and then people can watch it.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, ladies, for the information and the inspiration and the joy that you have brought relative to celebrating and remembering Christmas, which is the holy day that we celebrate as Christians and people of faith. And so we say a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday season to everybody else as they look forward to Christmas. And we say Asante Sana for your Kwanzaa presentation and information. And you can certainly tune in and connect with the Wadsworth Center and also Dr. Reynolds relative to Kwanzaa. I want to thank you all. And I want to thank our guests for being here tonight and being with us for the turning point. We appreciate you. You'll see us on the other side of the new year, 2021, as we get ready for a whole new beginning and a brand new start. Thank you for tuning in. Continue to turn all those corners that you have, because it's only when you turn the corner that you can find out what God has in store for you. God bless you. Stay safe. See you on the other side. Good evening.